Hi everyone, it's Caitlin Richter again. I'm here today to talk to you about the topic that I chose for my final paper and my final video. And I chose to focus on the social injustice of sexual violence against lesbian, gay, and bisexual individuals and how this type of trauma can impact their sexuality. So I want to start out by just quickly defining lesbian, gay, and bisexual, which I am going to shorten to LGB throughout this video. Lesbian refers to women who are attracted to women, gay refers to men who are attracted to men, and bisexual can refer to either men or women who do experience attraction to people of both genders. And studies have shown that about 3.5% of the US population identifies as LGB. And I do just want to quickly note that I did not include transgender individuals in my paper because gender identity is a separate issue from sexual orientation, and therefore it does have different implications for sexuality. So moving on to sexual violence. Sexual assault is any type of sexual act that's committed without the consent of one of the parties involved. Sexual assault and sexual violence I use kind of interchangeably as these kind of umbrella terms that include forced penetration, oral sex, groping, touching, harassment. All of these things are included under those umbrella terms. And sexual violence can occur through the use of physical force or also through psychological or emotional coercion or threats. And the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Study has found that LGBT individuals experience higher rates of sexual violence than heterosexual individuals. 1 in 8 lesbian women and almost half of bisexual women have been raped, compared to 1 in 6 heterosexual women. And when we're thinking about other forms of sexual violence that don't include rape, so things like forced oral sex, groping, touching, harassment, kissing. 46.4% of lesbian women and 43.3% of heterosexual women, so almost half of both of these populations, have experienced some sort of sexual violence other than rape. And those numbers rise to just about 75% of bisexual women experiencing some sort of sexual violence other than rape. And among gay men, 4 out of 10 have experienced, again, some sort of sexual violence other than rape. And this is compared to nearly half of bisexual men and 1 in 5 heterosexual men. And the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, they didn't report any estimates of rape experienced by gay and bisexual men because the numbers that they had were too small to find a reliable estimate. But the National Institute of Justice has found that 1 in 33 men, regardless of sexual orientation, have experienced attempted or completed rape at some point in their lifetime. And sexual violence has a lot of consequences. There can be immediate and lifelong physical, psychological, and social consequences for survivors of all sexual orientations. Some of the physical consequences can include physical injuries, exposure to sexually transmitted infections and possible pregnancy. Long-term physical consequences might include headaches or migraines, chronic pain, gynecological problems, or gastrointestinal disorders. Psychological consequences are again varied and can be very long-lasting. They can include depression and anxiety, PTSD, low self-esteem, and increased suicidal thoughts and attempts. And further, a lot of survivors tend to isolate themselves from family, friends, and intimate partners after experiencing this kind of trauma. And they can also engage in unhealthy behaviors such as participating in criminal activity or using harmful substances like alcohol and drugs. And experiencing sexual violence also impacts a person's sexual behaviors. This can lead to unprotected sex, choosing unhealthy sexual partners, or having multiple sexual partners. And there's really been very limited research that's investigated how experiencing sexual violence specifically impacts LGBT individuals' sexuality. But I do think that it's really important to consider how violence affects this part of somebody's life in order to engage in fully trauma-informed practice. And when we're thinking about the circles of sexuality, I think that there are several ways that experiencing sexual violence could impact LGBT individuals a little differently than heterosexual survivors of sexual violence. So first of all, the circle of intimacy, I think, could greatly be impacted by sexual violence, as survivors commonly have difficulty disclosing their trauma to people in their lives. And this can really lead to a decreased ability to experience sharing, honesty, and vulnerability with intimate partners. And this could further be complicated for LGBT survivors, as they may already feel some sort of barrier in disclosing their sexual orientation due to experienced oppression and discrimination. And having to disclose another intimate detail about their sexual experiences could be uncomfortable, and it could even be re-traumatizing for them. Another circle of sexuality that I think could be impacted is sexual identity. I think that's probably the circle that's most impacted by sexual violence among the LGBT community, because many LGBT folks live authentically by opposing stereotypical gender roles. So lesbian and bisexual women may be more comfortable using a more masculine gender presentation, while gay and bisexual men may live more comfortably with a more feminine gender presentation. In experiencing a sexual assault by a gender that one is not attracted to, this could lead to someone really feeling forced into stereotypical views of gender and sexuality, like the violence was some sort of punishment for kind of opposing these stereotypical roles. And being assaulted by a gender that one is not attracted to can also impact someone's feelings about their sexual orientation. So many LGBT individuals have a lot of pride in their sexual orientation, and being assaulted by a gender they're not attracted to can lead to survivors feeling that their sexual orientation has been challenged or invalidated. And this invalidation of sexual orientation is likely experienced more by lesbian and bisexual women, as nearly 100% of female survivors report that their perpetrator was a male. So, when thinking about the issue of sexual violence against LGBT community members, it's important for micro-level social workers to understand how LGBT oppression can further complicate the trauma of experiencing sexual violence. And on a macro level, I think it's important for social workers to advocate for social justice for the LGBT community. So advocating for issues surrounding education, employment, healthcare, policies, all of these things that kind of feed into the continuing oppression of the LGBT community. And ultimately, I think that social workers should strive for a non-oppressive society that doesn't view heterosexuality as natural or assumed, and that holistically supports LGBT survivors of sexual violence.